Brett Pesce was another defenseman added last offseason to try to bolster the Devils' blue line. I think he was a solid contributor, and similar to Brenden Dillon, he provided a lot of leadership, particularly to Luke Hughes. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play announcer, Devils Writer, Pucks, Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. In the previous episode, I talked about the solid contributions made by Brenden Dillon. I talked about his defense, physicality, leadership. He's entering the second year of his 3-year deal. As the episode progressed, it dawned on me. Not only did I forget about Brenden Dillon and didn't do a retrospective episode on his season until very late in the offseason, but I didn't do one on Brett Pesce, and I got to make it up to him. We can't forget about the fish because that's what Pesce translates to in Italian. So this episode is going to center around Brett Pesce and what he contributed to the Devils. In the first segment, we will reflect on his 2024-2025 season from a number standpoint. Then in the second segment, similar to what I did for Dilly, we'll talk about Pesce's contributions off the ice. And then in the third and final segment, the national TV broadcast schedule was released, and the Devils have 13 national televised games. I'm really looking forward to it. I think they have one of the highest national televised schedules in the NHL. I'm certainly not going to complain about it because, in the words of Charles Barkley, 2 words for you: must-see TV. The joke of it, that's more than 2 words for any of my diehard sports fans. But getting back to Brett Pesce, he is entering the second year of his 6-year, $33 million deal. Remember, during the offseason of 2023, the Devils parted ways with John Marino. They traded him to the Utah Mammoth in exchange for a second-round pick. That second-round pick became Mike Yegorov, who's tearing it up at Boston University, about to enter his sophomore year. But that cleared the way for Tom Fitzgerald to sign Brett Pesce to a big contract and lure him away from the Hurricanes. Pesce this season appeared in 72 games. He had 3 goals, 14 assists, which was 4th among Devils defensemen. He had 17 points, also 4th among Devils defensemen. But similar to Brenden Dillon, I'm not really expecting too much offensive contribution from Pesce's stick. He was first on the team in blocks with 138. As the season waned on, we realized that Pesce was not afraid to put his body on the line and block a lot of shots out front. Dilly was second on the team in blocks, and ahead of him was Pesce. Dillon was also second in hits. Ahead of him was Paul Cotter, who had a record year when it came to asserting himself physically. But I needed to talk more about Pesce and his blocks because we noticed on social media. We talked about it in the Pucks and Pitchforks group chat. One of the strengths of Brett Pesce is that he knows how to get in front of the puck and protect his netminder. And I think that made things a lot easier for Jacob Markstrom, Jake Allen, Nico Dawes, whomever was in between the pipes. Takeaways: he was third on the team with 25. Ahead of him was Luke and Kovacevic. Offensive point share rating, 0.1. Not really going to focus on that. He had a defensive point share rating of 3.7, 4th on the roster, giving him a point share rating of 3.9. Expected goals for rating. This actually surprised me. He was 3rd on the team with a rating of 55.4. Ahead of him was Timo Meier. I talked about it in a recent episode. The reason Timo Meier is very effective is that he creates offense for the Devils when he's out there, and the numbers showcase it. Second was Luke Hughes. Expected goals against, Pesce had a rating of 51.4, second on the team, just below Dillon. All in all, I think Pesce had a very solid year with the Devils. Now, before I give my thoughts, here's what Pesce had to say about his productive year during exit interviews. Take a listen.
From a personal standpoint, how would you assess your game now that the season's over?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty good year personally. I'm not the most flashy guy, but I'd like to think that I kind of I do what it takes for the team and sacrifice my body. It's just kind of how I always played. So
I also want to give Pesce a lot of credit. He was one of the players that elevated his game when the Devils were going down with their injuries during the playoffs when things were looking bleak. At one point, he played like 35 minutes in one game, and he said it was sort of like getting hit by a train or a bus, whichever example he said, because after the game, he was completely gassed. And remember, Pesce also sustained an injury after game one, and there were rumors circulating that maybe Pesce wouldn't be good to go the rest of the playoffs, but he really pulled it together and did everything he could to try to give the Devils a fighting chance. I know we talk about Shimon Nemitz, Brian Dumoulin, Jacob Markstrom as key examples of players who stepped up their game during that time, but don't forget about Brett Pesce. He was a workhorse as well. And in fact, he described Nico Hischier as a horse as well. I found that somewhat comical. Brett Pesce is a big defenseman who is extremely solid in his own zone, though he is not really physical when you consider his size. He does not produce elite point totals, but is a great partner for someone who can. Who was his partner? Luke Hughes. We'll talk more about that in the second segment. He is at his best when he plays a simple game, moves the puck out of danger, and focuses on keeping the puck out of his own net, can play in any game situation. He's a quality all-around defenseman. Offense, not going to wow you, but the numbers show that he does create offense when he's out there. That's why his expected goals for rating is one of the highest on the team. Pesce has also been getting some attention on the national scale. I believe he joined Team USA during the Four Nations as a possible replacement for Charlie McAvoy. Now, I'm not sure if he officially joined the roster, but I think he was in the building at TD Garden. And he was one of the 44 American players invited to the recent Team USA orientation to get ready for the Olympics. So it's not just the Devils discourse that is giving Brett Pesce his roses. He's getting that sort of attention on the national scale. The Devils had to sacrifice John Marino in order to make Brett Pesce work because they got rid of Marino's contract in order to sign Pesce to that 6-year deal. And I think he has been good as advertised. I said the same thing for Timo Meier. I think Brett Pesce has been a good addition for the Devils. And similar to Brenden Dillon, he adds a lot of tangibles to the roster that's been missing in recent years. Yes, he's not all that physical, but he makes up for it because he puts his body on the line. All right. We're going to talk about his leadership and what he provided off the rink. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready to kick off with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Okay, I alluded to it in the previous segment, but one thing that I was impressed during the season was Luke Hughes' ability to defend. Like, we talk about Luke Hughes being an offensive minded defenseman, and his first full year in the league, he kind of struggled defensively. He coughs up the puck a lot, but this season, Luke looked a lot better. Like, his stick work looked really good on the defensive end. And I think Brett Pesce played a big part in it because if you remember, Brett Pesce did not start the season with the Devils right away. He was still recovering from his lower body injury that he sustained with the Hurricanes. Luke Hughes also didn't start the season with the Devils. He was recovering with, I believe, a shoulder or some sort of arm injury. I can't remember off the top of my head. But basically, Luke and Pesce were working in tandem, trying to get their way back on ice as soon as possible. They weren't with the team in Prague, so it gave them some time to sort of build a camaraderie, a chemistry. And I think Luke showed Pesce some offensive skills, and in return, Pesce taught Luke some defensive skills. I think Brett was a good veteran mentor to Luke. I even asked Sheldon Keefe about it, and he said, yes, Pesce did mentor Luke, but he also wanted to give Luke his flowers and just say, like, Luke's been developing on his own as well, and he has grown a lot compared to his first year in the NHL. But I don't want the mentorship or the guidance to get lost because, similar to what I said about Brenden Dillon, veteran leadership goes a very long way. And if you need any proof, just look at Luke's ability to defend this past season. I noticed it in the games against the Florida Panthers. I asked Sheldon Keefe about it because Luke seemed to be everywhere defensively. And I talked about Pesce being third on the team in takeaways. You know who was first? Luke Hughes. So that's what I'm talking about with Luke Hughes' stick work. Yes, he sometimes turns the puck over a little too frequent. I remember talking to Jim Behringer about it, but Luke knows how to make up for it, and he's only going to continue to get better. Pesce talked about his relationship with Luke and how much they have grown this past season. Take a listen.
What can you say about your relationship with Luke and how you kind of saw him grow throughout the course of the season?
Yeah, consider him a close friend, really. We talk all the time. Texted him this morning about his injury, so yeah.
You're good.
Yeah, no, I think the sky's the limit for him. I think he's only kind of touching the surface of how good he's going to be. I think his defensive game really took a step. I didn't see him last year, but just each game I feel like he got better and better. And for a 21-year-old kid, that's what you want to see. He's just really maturing.
I know Luke was bound to develop either way. He's a great talent on the roster, and he's going to continue to get better. But I'm glad that Pesce sort of took him under his wing. And this goes back to what I said. Veteran leadership is so important. And if you have to look at the start of the season in any sort of positive manner, like, I know people were disappointed that Luke and Pesce weren't ready to go, but it gave them some time to build that relationship and basically learn from one another. I asked Pesce what are some of his goals heading into next season, and Amanda followed up and asked about having a good culture and just overall what can the team try to achieve next season. Take a listen.
Any goals next year to help develop your game and take it to the next level or something like that?
Yeah, just get stronger. Last summer it was tough because I had surgery, so that was really my first summer. I didn't really get to work out at all. So I'm excited to kind of get back into that normal summer routine.
Right, one of the things that you hear at the beginning, our goal is to get into the playoffs, right? But where does a team need to take that step? Like, that is the standard, right? Like, and what's that difference there?
Yeah, just the mindset. It comes with experience too. Like, I don't think our goal should ever be to make the playoffs. I think it should be to win a Stanley Cup. That's just the reality of it. I think our team's good enough to do it too. Like, we kind of have a little bit of everything that most teams don't. And we got a special group here, so I think our standard should be that and that only.
When you say we have something that maybe most teams don't, are you talking about personnel, the vibe, like what do you?
Just everything. Guys in the room, how well we blend together, and obviously I've never won a Stanley Cup, but there's a winning culture in Carolina, and I think we're growing it and building it, and also personnel. We got superstars, we have young guys, old guys. We have a little bit of everything. We got great goaltending. So yeah, I think we could do some damage.
I think Brett is already a pretty good all-around defenseman. Would I like to see him be more physical with his size? Yeah, but at the same time, the fact that he's not afraid to get in front of a puck and return to sender, and those hurt. Those really do hurt. Any hockey player will tell you. And also the fact that he elevated his game during the playoffs, I think that really says something about his drive and his determination. And there's just something so compelling about it. And similar to Brenden Dillon, I'm a big fan of his. I think Brett is a happy-go-lucky type of person. He brings a positive mindset to work. And not only that, he takes care of his business on the ice. So Brett Pesce, I know I say this about a lot of Devils players, but honestly, none of them are really diva-ish, for lack of a better term. Pesce provided some really good insight. Going back to the goals as a team, he talked about his time with the Hurricanes and how it's pretty much expected for the Hurricanes to make the playoffs and be a threat in the Metro. And stuff like that takes time. For the Devils, they're not quite there. People have high expectations for them every year. I think the past 3 seasons, people have been predicting for them to be a playoff team, albeit I don't think they're a 100-plus point team, but they're certainly a 90-plus point team. I don't think that should be much of a debate. I saw something on Twitter, and someone said, like, the Devils are a playoff team. They're a good team, but they're overrated during the offseason, meaning that people think that they're going to get like 105 points or 110 points. I'll leave that discussion to you, but getting back to what Pesce said, it relates to what some of his teammates said, which is this team is not satisfied making the playoffs. They want to take that next step. And while their core is young in terms of an average human, they have plenty of NHL experience underneath their belts. We talked about Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt. They're closing in on 10 years of NHL experience, if you could believe it. I know they're in their mid-20s, but still, that's something to take into consideration. And they're trying to learn. They're trying to grow from each other. I think the big thing for the Devils, if they really want to be a threat, they got to remain healthy, and they got the talent. That's what Pesce also said in his soundbite. They have everything. They have good scoring. They have a solid blue line. They have great goaltending. I think they have enough physicality. They were one of the most physical teams last year, if you could believe it. They were in the top 10 for most hits per game. You have a player that broke the team's record for most hits in a single season, which was Paul Cotter. And you got some enforcers on your team, like Brenden Dillon's not afraid to drop the mitts. Same with Curtis McDermott, Stefan Nason, Paul Cotter. You know they're going to assert themselves physically. Hopefully, Jesper Bratt, Jack Hughes, and Nico Hischier are adding a bit more muscle. But this team has it, and they have good coaching. Just to add, I know a lot of people are sad to see Ryan McGill go, but Brad Shaw, you saw the development of Zach Werenski out in Columbus. Brad Shaw played a big part of it when he was with John Tortorella. So my thing is, I do agree with Pesce, which is this team has everything to legitimately make it deep into the playoffs, but we're just going to have to wait and see. I won't say that they're a threat to win it all or to even get to the cup, but I won't count them out either. But they got to go out and prove it to me. That's all I'll say. I've said it in a previous episode. Go out there and prove to me that you belong to be in the consideration for the Stanley Cup. At least that's what the betting lines are saying. My final conclusion on Brett Pesce, great addition, great solid contributor defensively, puts up some good numbers. He's getting national attention. But more importantly, similar to what I talked about when it came to Dilly, he provides tremendous leadership as well and brings a positive mindset to work. All right, we're going to talk about the TV schedule for the Devils momentarily. But before we continue, I have an important announcement. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't like, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping out. And now, a message from Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you could end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all the accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Something that Monarch helped me with was realizing how much I spent on takeout. Since I started using Monarch, not only am I eating healthier, but my wallet is also healthier, which I think is more important. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use Locked On NHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code Locked On NHL. Okay, let's talk about these 13 exclusive national televised games for the Devils this upcoming season. ESPN and TNT Sports announced their respective NHL U.S. national broadcast schedules for the 2025-2026 season. With the announcement, the Devils will be featured in 13 exclusive national broadcast contests, the most allowed per team, and once again, hitting the maximum threshold of the 13 they played each of the past 2 seasons. The league also announced game time changes. The MSG Network's broadcast schedule will be announced at a later date. The games assigned to the national broadcast are as follows. On October 9th, the Devils will play at Raleigh against the Hurricanes, moved from 7 p.m. to 7:30. Hurricanes and Devils, always a physical matchup. And going back to last year during the regular season, some of the games were controversial. I remember the Timo Meier ejection for supposedly kneeing Martin Necas. It got so chippy that you had some politicians talking about it who were based in North Carolina. So that was compelling. November 12th, Devils at Chicago. Love seeing Connor Bedard. December 17th, Devils at Vegas. TNT. Can Jack Hughes avoid the boards? And will Jack Eichel put on a show? You're just going to have to wait and see. And also, Paul Cotter returns to Vegas for the second time. January 6th, 2026, Devils on Long Island. ESPN Plus moved from 7 p.m. to 7:30. January 20th, Devils at Edmonton, TNT. I said it at the top of this recording. Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. In the words of Charles Barkley, I got 2 words for you. Must see TV. That's more than 2 words, but you get it. Just an inside joke. March 3rd, Florida at New Jersey, TNT. Will Matthew Tkachuk go at Nico Hischier once again? Because I think Tkachuk will be good to go at around this time. Just speculating. March 4th, Toronto in New Jersey. Will Sheldon Keefe finally get his first win against his former club? Oh boy, I'm loving this one. March 7th, Rangers at Devils. Always entertaining. Such a shame that the Rangers are only playing the Devils 3 times this year and they're all bunched together later in the second half of the season. But you know what? Better than nothing. March 8th, Detroit comes to New Jersey, ESPN. Not really a rivalry all that much, but for any of you old hockey heads, 1995, the Devils upset the heavily favored Red Wings to win their first ever Stanley Cup. That Red Wings team had 10 plus Hall of Famers on their roster. I wasn't born then. Don't come after me. I can't control when I was born. March 16th, Boston in New Jersey. Fun fact, Ryan Novozinski of NJ.com, he admitted last season when he left the Devils beat that he was a Bruins fan. He grew up a Bruins fan. I wonder how he's going to feel about that. I might have to reach out to him. March 18th, Devils at Rangers, TNT. Bring the boom to TNT. April 2nd, Capitals at Devils. Alex Ovechkin, could that be his farewell in New Jersey? Question mark. Does Ovi play a few more seasons? If not, you might want to tune in to ESPN Plus / Hulu, moved from 7 p.m. to 7:30. And lastly, April 7th, Flyers at Devils, ESPN. You know what? I'm curious to see Trevor Zegras in a Flyers uniform. Remember the debate a few years ago? Who's better, Zegras or Hughes? I think Hughes takes the cake in this instance. You know what? I bashed on Hughes a few episodes ago when I said I would take Austin Matthews over him. Just trying to be honest. Let me give Jack Hughes some love. There you go. There's the national TV broadcast. Really looking forward to the hockey season. Let me know your thoughts on Brett Pesce and what you felt as though was his greatest strength. And what do you expect out of him this upcoming year? And which national televised game are you looking forward to the most? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all I'm going to have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.